I mean,
well,
how do you
guys
defend it?
I understand. Look, it's frustrating. This is economy in this, current circumstances out there for people. It is frustrating, and I agree with them. I'm angry. I'm angry that right now we're not on the right track, and I believe that we're starting to get in that direction. And I'm not going to sit here and say that every single Democratic policy has been a success. I'm not going to lie to people, but we have to learn from our mistakes and move forward, and that's what's most important. And we joke about this story and that story, but going back to examples, Minority Leader Bob Watson. You have an example of an individual who got in a very difficult personal position. You have a senator on the Senate side that had a personal issue in reference to foreclosures. You had,
I don't want to be honest with you. Now it seems as if we're getting into finger pointing. I brought up Bob Watson a few moments ago with Ken, so I want to call you on this one, especially with the Ionazi kid. There are people who take a look at this kid who didn't graduate college. And he is making $83,000, although he did, in fact, turn down the raise. He's making $85,000 as a state Senate staffer. That obviously does not sit well with people paying attention to this. So, I mean, do you agree? Do you think he's qualified to hold this position?
I don't know. I don't know this individual. I understand, like any political office, it's at the discretion of that individual.
But it does not look good.
Look, that's a personal decision that the Senate leadership has had to make. They've hired this individual. We've seen it. It goes back year after year. Do I think it makes a good headline and it's a bad story for Rhode Island? It is. I think that it doesn't sit well with folks. But, again, political hires, you look back to Governor Kucheri. I believe he got a job for his cousin or his niece or something like that, Ken, at some point. So, these stories continue year after year, and it's not helpful in this current circumstance.
I don't think it's fair to equate what Governor Kucheri, anything that you could criticize Governor Kucheri for with Teresa Paiva-Weed hiring this Ionazi man. I don't see the correlation between the two. This is something that I think that it's indicative of the way the Democrats have run the General Assembly for decades. Special jobs and giveaways to everybody. I mean, between the legislative grant process, the Democrats have a huge question to answer on the way they've run our General Assembly.
Ed?
Look, again, I just keep pointing back to the fact that it was a Democratic General Assembly who put a responsible, balanced budget on the table, not this governor. For the past 8 years, Governor Kucheri had all the opportunities in the world to be able to sit down with legislative leaders and be able to put forward legislative package, budget after budget in order to push this state forward. It never happened. There was no cooperation. Ken, you were there for 4 years. Governor Kucheri didn't realize what he needed to do until his last 2 years when he realized his legacy wasn't going to be anything but 8 years of no accomplishments.
I know you're trying to go to a break. The only thing I would disagree on is the first 2 years we were there, we spent every week. I loved somebody's comment. I think it was Gordon Fox's comment coming out of this. Well, we worked well together. We talked. We met once a week. For 2 years, we had lunch every Wednesday and every Thursday, I believe it was, with the House leadership and the Senate leadership. And they would promise all year long, as long as you don't, badmouth us, as long as you don't point out any flaws that you see, we'll work together. We'll negotiate a budget together. And then the end of the session would come around and there'd be no meeting. They string you along. We're going to be perfectly reasonable this year. And then at the end of the thing, they pull the rug out from under you. It's like Lucy and the football and Charlie Brown. And so you're right. There wasn't a lot of cooperation when I was there because I only get burned once. And I'm like, all right, so we're fighting. Yeah, that's fine by me. We'll fight it out. But it's not completely unfair when they go back and look at Kucheri and say, well, he didn't know how to get along with everybody. He tried.
That's Ken McKay, who is the head of the Republican Party here in the state. Ed Pacheco, the head of the Democratic Party in the state, joining us here. A view from the top.
That's right. It's 8:54 right now. So I think what most people, if they were listening in right now, they would say, you're not up at the State House right now, but you're running the individual parties. What is it going to take to right the ship? What kind of candidate? You've got John Laughlin coming in, Ken. You've got Brendan Doherty coming in, getting a lot of buzz. Can't wait for that. Hopefully they go head-to-head and really let people see what they're all about. Democratically, who do you have to offer, Ed?
We have 3 congressional incumbents that'll be running for re-election next year. I'm actually excited because the Republicans have looks like a primary on the congressional race for next year, and it'll be interesting to watch because while Brendan Doherty has had a impressive first fundraising quarter, this past election in 2010, the congressional first district for the Republican primary had, I think it was maybe 8,000 voters in that district. John Laughlin, being the former candidate, is going to be a pretty impressive candidate also going into the next election. So Democrats will be watching very candidly with the Republican primary and see what happens, and we'll be ready for the fall.
You know why there's going to be a contested Republican primary? Because the incumbent is a very weak congressman. First-term Congressman David Cicilline has garnered so many headlines with what had happened in Providence. That's why these two Republicans are stepping up, saying they're clamoring to run for that office.
Everybody says when you're a candidate for office, your most difficult election is your first time running for re-election. So it doesn't go without expectations to have a candidate on the other side of the aisle.
Do you think Congressman Cicilline is effective in Washington?
I think he's very effective. As far as the Democratic caucus, as their efforts to be able to create jobs in this country, he had one of the 8 pieces of legislation that the Democratic leadership put on the table to be able to create jobs. Now his Made in America block grant legislation. As a freshman congressman, that's unheard of. So obviously he's doing something right down there.
Ken, is the point to try to get someone to knock off Cicilline, but there's some fear with some folks that want to see a Republican in there, finally, that John Laughlin and Brendan Doherty might beat each other into the ground and David Cicilline walks away with it?
Nah, David Cicilline's, I don't even know that he's the one we'll be seeing. I think that, what's the banker there, Merrill Sherman, I think her name is. She used to be a Cicilline financial supporter. Now the story is she wants to run against him.
Oh, but Cicilline's name has been out there for so long. You think someone with money can just come in that no one knows?
Oh, this guy's very unpopular. I mean, he got caught lying, right? So last time he said when he left the city of Providence's finances were great. Turns out the place was a mess. Angel Tavares, another supporter of his, came in and said, "What you guys run the clip all the time, Category 5 or whatever." The guy wasn't telling the truth. And with respect to being effective, I mean, he's an effective Democrat because he thinks that government creates jobs, and he thinks that passing bills is how the country moves forward. It's not. The only people that create jobs are people in the private sector. They create the jobs, and the private sector is running for the exit because the way the Democrats have run the state for so long. David Cicilline is emblematic of that. He's going to wear it around his neck. I hope they primary him and lose, and I think they will lose. He appeals to the Democrat base. He is, an openly gay, liberal, big spending, don't worry about the financial consequences Democrat, and that's what's been running Rhode Island for generations. So I think he's right in their wheelhouse. I think they'll muddy him up a little bit, and the Republicans will have a robust debate about who would be better to fill the seat for the first district.
Each 1 minute left. Ed, do you want to respond to that?
As we look into the next election, I think it's funny that we constantly hear from Republicans over and over again that big spenders, that we don't like to, Democrats believe that government can create jobs. Look, it's Democrats in Washington that are having the debate as far as not having tax breaks for the big oil companies. We see quarter after quarter ExxonMobil posting $40 billion, and that's with a B, $40 billion in profit. That's after paying the bills and taking a paycheck, and we're still handing out subsidies to those types of companies at the federal level. We're still handing out tax rebates. We're still handing out tax deductions to hedge funders who only pay 15% of their income into the government, and everybody else, you have somebody paying 28% who's a secretary out there. That to me is the priorities of the Democratic Party: make an even and fair playing field, because right now it's not fair.
Going to give the last word to Ken McKay from the Republican Party.
Yeah, if those are the priorities of the Democrat Party, then Ed has just admitted that the Democrat Party has been an abysmal failure, because they took the House, they took the Senate, and they have the White House, and none of that has been dealt with. They run government, and they don't deal with all the things they complain about year after year after year. Fix those things if those are the problems. You didn't do anything.
Can't do anything with a group of 48 people holding up the process.
Gentlemen,
well, that's just now. I'm telling you, you go back a few years.
We just had 24 minutes, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Ken McKay of the Republican Party, Ed Pacheco of the State Democratic Party.
You got to come back.
This was
View from the top.
Good.
We'll try to do it.
Right.
We'll try to do it.
I like Ed.
They're
I'll
good
come back
sports.
anytime.
It's good to get it all out there. It is now.
Because I complimented that he dresses nice.
That's right.
That's right.
It's 9 o'clock. Time for the day's headlines. Busy Monday morning. Bill Haberman, take it away.
I would love to